Thank you very much for taking the time to take our call. So I'm really, really looking forward to speaking with you because, you know, I have been introduced to the business model development method that you have, Canvas, about 10 years ago, actually, when I was in Brazil, and the board of directors of Soft2Sul. Soft2Sul is a trade body that confederates all software and hardware companies in the south of Brazil. And the board of directors decided that they needed to embark on a review of what was working, what was not for the organization. And we had someone come from São Paulo, actually, Marcelo Pimenta, who actually introduced us to this. So we spent an afternoon looking at the business model of the organization and the way forward using your method. So thank you very much. And of course, I used it twice already. And when I started other companies too, we used it as a great tool. So, but I know lately you've been very focused on your company, Strategizer, that has it's a consultancy actually that helps companies large and small to, you know, big multinationals to improve their innovation programs, so to speak. Can you tell us a bit about about your journey? How did you start your pathway in entrepreneurship, and how did you come to develop all these wonderful tools?
So many years back, actually around the year 2000, I started a doctoral dissertation on the topic of business models with a professor called Yves Pigneur, who's now my longtime co-author and a very good friend. So that's how the whole thing started. And the original idea was that startups, you know, shouldn't write business plans because business plans are they're focused on execution. But you know what? The startup entrepreneurial and innovation journey is not about execution. It's about testing and adapting until you kind of find how the idea could work. So that's how it started. And then in 2008, we wrote the first book, Business Model Generation, published it in 2009. Actually with an innovative business model. So we self-published, we got people to pay us to participate. And then, you know, after that book was a big success, I created Strategizer, and we started working with large companies to help them innovate. And we've been doing that now for 10 years. And the difference with any consultancy is we said, well, we don't want to do consultancy or training. It's kind of boring, not so interesting. So we do technology-enabled services. So we use software and e-learning and remote working actually on our software to augment the accompanying of companies and managing innovation portfolios.
Yes, indeed. The consultancies themselves do not allow for scalability, right? There's so many people you can actually, you know, deploy to a company. So of course, makes sense that you go online. Besides, we have experienced now in the last 18 months, really a necessity of being online for training. So tell us a bit about your books too, because you have authored and co-authored several books. Two I would like to focus on today. It's The Invincible Company that you have just published. I think it's been a year now about. Yeah. Tell us a bit about what are the premises and the principles that you expose in this book.
So we basically, every time we write a book, we ask ourselves, does the world need another book? And normally the answer should be no. There's so many business books out there. But look, we've learned a lot of what's not working yet in innovation. And we kind of package that, you know, from our experience in the field with companies around the world and try to make that accessible. So I'd say there are two main topics. One is helping companies go beyond, you know, innovating on technology, product, and service alone, and really think about business model innovation. So we've seen that despite our first book and what we've been doing since then, people are very technology focused, very, you know, product focused. But that's, you know, not enough. You want to focus on how to create better business models. That's the first topic. And the second topic is, you know, helping established organizations, small and big, because it's very similar kind of challenge, to help them reinvent themselves. Because you don't need to throw everything away. When you have a company, you need to manage what you have and make that better. And at the same time, invent the future, this so-called ambidextrous organization. So we talk about those two topics and how you can do that in your organization. In particular, we wanted to help leaders understand how innovation works. There are many innovation books out there, and we build on top of many of the great authors there. We wanted to make it very practical, so leaders can understand, oh, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to put in place to manage the existing and invent the future. So that's what we describe in The Invincible Company. Very arrogant title, because no company can be invincible. What you actually have to do is be very humble and admit that there is no such thing as invincibility. So you have to reinvent yourself. And if you don't, and you say, oh, I'm successful, you might actually get disrupted, because success is the roots of failure, right? Because when you don't keep this mentality, it's day one. Jeff Bezos from Amazon likes to say it's day one, always day one. You start to get complacent. You start to get lazy, in quotes, because you think, you're ahead. But arrogance is really dangerous these days, because there's so many disruptors out there.
Indeed, and we see from other parts of the globe too, innovation. The geography of innovation is changing too. We have China, we have the European Union itself, countries in Africa. There is disruption and innovation everywhere. So companies that really want to be scalable and global need to be looking at everything that's happening. So you make two very good points, which in fact, one is to keep this sense of the innovation is an everyday task, right? But at the same time, management is a different sort of area you have to focus on too. When things are working, processes, right? Companies need that as well. So when is the moment that a company decides that has to move from that idea of just being innovative to also encompass processes?
So I think, there's this myth about innovation that it's all about the creative genius, and that's just not true. The best innovators, they actually have very good execution processes and very good innovation processes, and they're not the same. They don't have the same metrics. They don't have the same culture. You even, to a certain extent, have different people. So you need to create two cultures, two set of processes, and almost two skill sets, right? And sometimes, of course, it's not like a Chinese wall and you have the two groups left and right. No, it's a membrane where people from execution can go into innovation, people in innovation grow into execution. But you do need to have a core of professional innovators. And we like to say that it should be around 1% of your staff should be professional innovators. And today, innovation is not yet treated like a profession. We say, oh, go do 20% of your time. Imagine if we said, oh, write the annual report with 20% of your remaining time. Or, oh, we need some marketing. Go do a little bit of marketing on Friday afternoon. Or, that's not serious, right? So innovation is a profession. And, yes, everybody has to rethink what they're doing and how they're working, but not everybody has to reinvent the company. So you have different types of innovation and different processes. Efficiency innovation is improving the processes. Sustaining innovation is new products, new channels, digital channels. And transformative innovation is about inventing the future. You need to work on all three, but they're very different, right? The processes for efficiency innovation can happen in your core business. That everybody can do, everybody should do. But not everybody needs to reinvent the company, right? If you're managing a supply chain or a factory, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You need to make the factory better. Creating a new product and a new business model around it, that's a completely different task. That's a job. That's an entrepreneurial job. So we need to be able to do this inside companies a lot more systematically than we ever had. And it's not the creative genius. It's something we can put in place in innovation ecosystem, with an innovation culture. You measure risk and decreasing risk. So all of this now, we actually know how to do it. The only thing that's left is for management to decide we're going to do this. Innovation comes bottom up, but without the top-down senior leadership support, innovation will not happen. So that's the other myth. Oh, but it's bottom up. Yes, it is, but bottom up will die. It's like a plant. If you don't give the plant water and nutrition, it's going to die. So there's this myth that everything is bottom up and doesn't need top down support. Last piece, I actually get excited about this one. People say, well, I'm a corporate rebel. Well, if you're a corporate rebel, it means you don't really, it's not a profession. You're fighting against the Constitution. Why don't you just rewrite the Constitution so you're not a rebel anymore, but you're actually a core part and a core partner of the organization. So we shouldn't call innovators rebels or pirates, because historically we kill rebels or pirates. We need to make them partners. Just like, finance department, marketing, product development, these are all substantial parts of the company. Innovators who invent the future need to be partners, not rule breakers. Change the rules. Don't break the rules, change the rules.
So one last question, in terms of adapting your methodology, how do governments adopt it? Have you had the experience working with governments, for instance?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually very early on in my career, I worked with parts of the Canadian government with a gentleman called Mike Lachapelle, and he continues to work with governments and not-for-profits. And then later, I personally worked with some cities, did workshops with the city of Vienna, the city of Odense in Denmark. And then actually, Steve Blank, who launched the whole lean startup movement together with a gentleman called Pete Newell, brought this into the US Department of Defense. And they've been continuously using these methodologies with a tool, that's slightly adapted version of the business model canvas called the mission model canvas, to reinvent first in the Department of Defense, then it's swapped over to the State Department. So this is used in governments. Now, when it comes to innovation, there's one key challenge in innovation with governments and public money is in innovation, failure and success are two sides of the same coin. Like you cannot innovate without experimentation and failure. Failure is never the goal, but it's an inevitable side product of experimentation and innovation. Now, when you waste government funds, you go to jail. So the problem is you shouldn't look at the success or failure of a project. A government should have 10 projects and evaluate the portfolio. So 1 out of 10 projects will succeed, but 9 will fail. And that's how innovation works. Because if you actually expect a team to succeed, you condemn them to succeed, they're not going to be able to experiment. They can't take any risks. So what will happen? They're actually going to play it safe and you don't get breakthrough innovation. So it's the inherent kind of challenge with public money. You need to look at the return on portfolio of projects, not the return on project. It's a big idea that we have in the health sector. I used to, work with government organizations like UNAIDS, WHO. So you really need to change the way you look at success by allowing, big wins to happen with many small and cheap failures, right? Nobody wants to waste a lot of money, but in innovation, you will have a lot of experiments and a lot of failure. The question is, how are you managing that? Because you will have a return on portfolio. And governments are not used to thinking that way. So it is a bit of a challenge, but I think this change is happening. If we want breakthrough innovation in government institutions or intergovernment institutions, we need to invest in a portfolio of projects, small amount of money, and then do follow-up investments in those that are successful, and the winners will emerge. So that's how you get breakthrough innovation. It's a little bit like bringing venture capital to government projects. I think it's possible. There's actually no other way if you want innovation. Execution and innovation have a completely different logic. So if you want breakthrough innovation, you're going to have to invest more like a venture capitalist, being careful with the money by investing in a portfolio.
Is there anything else you'd like to announce? Is something else coming up in terms of the projects you are managing right now, the strategizer scaling up and becoming a full-fledged educational company?
There's not more to develop. Now is the moment to innovate. I think there's a huge opportunity. I think COVID-19, with all the very negative side effects and the challenges that a lot of organizations and people had to go through, it also, has been a booster to innovation. So I think we need to use this crisis as a clear kind of starting point and opportunity. And a lot of leaders are seeing this. We've never, worked remotely across the world ever before on such a scale. Our company always has done it because it was part of our DNA, but, all of our clients now do this. So we work with very large companies, like the biggest pharma companies on the world, Colgate, and we do this all remotely across the globe with teams in Latin America, North America, Asia, and it's possible. I mean, there have never been so many innovation opportunities before. I think it's an exciting time, and in particular, coming out of COVID, we will have the opportunity to get the best of both worlds, the physical world and the remote world. Now the world is ready for a new scale of innovation. So it's exciting times.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.